democracies, it's sometimes needed to define the pay that politicians get. There are several main reasons for this. Firstly, equality. Secondly, corruption, which will always exist. I'll come back to it later. And we'll also later on explain the model we were looking at. So, firstly, on the equality stance, it's in the best interest for everyone that politicians get paid the average income of the country. This is because, after all, they are representing the people, and therefore they should, be in the same position as the people and not earn a lot more or a lot less. So why shouldn't they be paid too much? Well, firstly, when you're paid when you're paid far too much, it can become an incentive for some people with bad leadership skills or ideals to become politicians. And
so,
yes.
But if the salary is low, then doesn't this mean that you actually need to have lots of money to become a politician to live a normal life?
No, I was talking about high salaries. So if it's too high, then it would be an incentive for bad people with bad ideals to become politicians, and disregarding the fact that they should be representing the people, which they won't care about because their only aim is to make money. However, on the other side, it is in the bad interest of the politicians to not earn any money at all, because one, they need to earn a living themselves, and therefore, they need money. And secondly, not earning any money will maybe shy away skilled people, which could make good improvements to the country. So why is this bad? Well, it could bring the country in disarray because. Yes.
Would you also implement this policy in developing nations?
Well, we're talking about Western nations at the moment, I think. It's probably worse in developing nations, but I'm concentrating myself on Western democracies. It's needed to have a standard pay for everyone, because it will improve equality. It will ensure that people will be better represented, and ensure that the best and corruption will always be present anyway. It's a job of the police and other enforcement agencies to enforce that, and therefore having more or less pay won't really change that. Having more pay will just drive more corrupt people into the government, and that is not what we want. And having too little pay will force rich people, will ensure that only rich people go into the government, or make sure that or ensure that local people will try and get paid more and take advantage of their power. The model we would want to implement would be to take the average of all employed people, the money gained by the employed people of a country of the previous year, and take the average. Leaders of businesses or businessmen will not be included because they don't work for a company and rather lead it themselves. Therefore, they are not employed and don't really have a measurable pay salary. And that's all I have to say. No thanks.
Thanks, Speaker, very much for that speech, and invite the Leader of the Opposition to open the case for the open.
talk about, I think the whole kind of the rebuttal part will be integrated in my constructive. But first of all, I will start with talking about why actually we have politicians and what kind of mechanisms we have in a democracy, because I think this is kind of essential in this debate to kind of see what we are dealing with, right? So, like, it's very important that we have, like, the representation of people in the society, right? And we have two mechanisms for this, actually. One of them is voting, which means that all the people in the society can vote, which means that they can choose the people they want them to represent, right? Which is kind of one part of the selection process, how we can get people in the parliament, in the society, so that it's kind of represented. Now, the other thing is the salary, which is actually a very important part of all this, because salary has enormous amounts of factors in the decision process. Like, first of all, why we usually pay high salaries for people who have lots of power? First of all, because then they couldn't be like, well, for instance, they are first of all unbiased most probably. It's much harder to kind of bribe them, and actually we hope that people who work for this, they do it actually for making the society better. And through the voting process, we try to actually find these people who want to make the society better, and through the salary, which is a control mechanism, to actually guarantee that they are making the decisions that they promise to, not that they are bought by companies or whatever. And I think a big problem kind of a big problem in this debate is what the opening government actually didn't tell about, is why we do not kind of apply this in poor countries, for instance. Actually, we see this as a major issue in poor countries, like in Western democracies, like, for instance, for God's sake, like, if we have everybody's rich, then we wouldn't have problems in the world, right? But actually, like, in poor countries, this policy would have, like, tremendous problems. Starting from the fact that rich people are the only ones who can lead, right? But I'll talk about this later. But also actually in Western countries, I think still it is kind of a problem, because we have, like, if media means pretty much that half of the people earn less and half earn more. Okay, so now let's go to the constructive, which is like, why actually the rich people are the ones who would pursue this career? Well, first of all, like, being a politician is not a very safe bet, which means that if you become a politician, you don't know if you will be a politician in the future. But if you don't get too much money, this means that you don't have, like, a safety mechanism if you lose your job. Meaning that if you're actually poor and you have some kind of specific job, then you won't give up the job with a hope to become a politician, because it's a huge effort to become a politician. First of all, you have this kind of election thing going on for a year, you have to campaign, and in the end it turns out you can't be a politician, which pretty much means that you don't have any money, because you can't work at the same time, because it's like a full-time job. Which pretty much means that, like in the current case, we usually have the kind of the politician's salary kind of factored by the median or average wage or whatever. This means that actually, like, you get kind of reasonable sum of money, and you can actually live, and it's much more reasonable for you to take the risk. But here what we see is that actually, as the median wage tends to be usually quite small, and not actually something which everybody wants to kind of earn, then we see here that rich people are the ones who pursue these careers, because they already have money, they already have safety nets, and then this means that pretty much we have rich people governing the countries, right? And why this is bad? Well, for obvious reasons. First of all, they are not unbiased. They most probably want to make policies which are good for them. This means that the whole government and the whole parliament is actually skewed, and the whole kind of the distribution of rich people is there, which means that they might not think about poor people, right? Because the people we can vote for are the ones who are for the rich people, right? Another problem. Okay, so this was kind of from the rich people part. Now the second thing is actually kind of a practical and also a time issue. That even if, let's say, that kind of this is an incentive from the government thinks that this is an incentive that kind of you make the country a better place and then you earn more. You see, the problem here is you can't earn too much more. First of all, you're in the parliament for 4 years, which means that even if the median, I don't know, rises 10%, you won't gain much, which means that actually you're not incentivized to make decisions which kind of give you a better salary. If it's like, if your salary is factored by 5, then this means that actually the salary becomes much better even if the median kind of rises a bit. And now the problem here is that all the decisions you make, they take a long time. It might be like 8 years when your decision actually affects the median wage. But you don't want to make these decisions because you actually don't know if you are in the parliament in 8 years. And most probably are not, because you never know. Right? So what we see here is that kind of taking away this kind of not incentivizing people that much salary-wise is a big problem, especially because they don't want to make decisions which kind of have monetary effect. Moreover, most probably they would tend to make decisions, as the salary is most probably quite low, they would make decisions which are like beneficial for them later. So now I'm kind of going back to the fact what I mentioned about bribes. Like if your salary is quite low and you don't know if you're going to be in the parliament in 8 years, it's quite reasonable to assume that you might be kind of susceptible for taking bribes. Like if there is some kind of company approaching you and saying that, I don't know, like just vote yes in the parliament, for instance, then you're much more susceptible to make this yes vote than a no vote, because you think about your future.
On that point, don't you think that the amount you could possibly get by bribery is far higher than any reasonable higher salary that you might propose?
No, not really. You see, the problem with bribery usually is that people who earn reasonable amounts of money so that they can go away on traveling, they can have hobbies, then in this case, it's kind of reasonable for them not to take bribes, because first of all, it's socially unacceptable. You might lose your job. You can never be a politician again. You can't be a prime minister because the goal of politicians usually is to become a prime minister. So the risk is too high. At the same time, you can live a reasonable life. Now, if your life is not so great, right, which means that you can kind of eat, you can kind of do stuff, but not too much, which means that you have to think about money all the time. Like this is where the bribery factors in. People who have to think about money every day, it's much easier to buy them, because actually money is an issue for them. This is the reason why, like if you want to work for a secret service, why they check your bank accounts if you have problems with money, because people who have not too large amounts of money and who actually are, then they are like much more susceptible to bribes. And this is actually what the government is creating here. Like we have like 100 or 200 people in the parliament who don't have much money, who have to think about money all the time. And now, guess what? Is it easier or not to kind of run through policies which actually give them much more money and kind of. No, thank you, we're out of time. And now let's fastly take the poor countries example, which of course, like in the poor countries example, is super extreme. There we only see rich people in the parliament, as we already kind of see, which means that there will be political dynasties, which means that all these people are just making policies to make them richer, others poorer, and kind of dividing the society even more. So what we see here is that this is extremely bad policy, and this should never be implemented anywhere. For all these reasons, I beg you to oppose.
Thank you, Speaker, very much for that speech, and invite the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case of the European Government.
Honourable audience, before I'd like to start my constructive, I'd like to start with a few points of rebuttal on what the previous speaker has brought about. So we have heard about this mechanism of representation, the voting part, the selection part, the salary part. And we haven't really heard much about, we haven't really heard much about voting. I will come to that later. But first of all, I will talk about the salary mechanisms and how bribery comes into this game. So for example, if you're a politician, then first of all, and you earn a minimum wage in a Western country, then it's not the case that you have to think about money every day. It's not as if the medium citizen in a Western country has to do that every day. With a medium wage in most countries, in Western Europe at least, you can still lead a reasonable life. You can care for your family, and you don't have to not have the money on your mind every day. We're not talking about we're talking about medium wage, not minimum wage. So then we've heard about yes.
Do you consider Estonia to be a liberal democracy, Western?
Well, I would say yes. Okay, so in the case of the bribery part, so we would say that bribery happens in any case. So whether you earn a minimum wage or something more, let's say the Chancellor of Germany earns about 200,000 euro per year. If you just take bribes or generally expand your income, that's much easier to reach in a reasonable amount of time, even if you use semi-legal methods like just giving talks or just generally earning money on the side. This is way easier to reach. So just by paying people more, you won't de-incentivize corruption, because the people who are corrupt, they just want to get more money. They don't want to get a specific amount of money. They're just doing it because they want to be rich and because they want to have influence. And you can see that, for example, just recently in the House of Lords, you have all these high-paid lords who are sitting there on benches, and many of them actually have a criminal conviction for missing registration of parliamentary expenses, and many of them are corrupt, as we all know. So in this case, obviously, the high payment didn't really have an effect on that. The same goes for Italy, by the way, where politicians are very highly paid. So, no, thank you. So we don't see that this de-incentivizes corruption in any way. We have heard that politician is not a safe career. So if you're thinking about going into politics, you think about you know that you might not have a high wage later, and it's quite unsure. Well, that happens in any case, right? I mean, you don't know whether you'll become a politician, whether you get a high salary or no salary. It's always the same. So you might lose your job so if you have a high-paid job before and then you become a politician, then you have what you want and you earn less, but then you have what you want because that's what you chose to do. If you don't, no, thank you. If you don't go into politics, then you can still keep your old job. And campaigns, for that matter, they are mostly financed by political organizations themselves and not by individuals. Okay, I will take you.
Don't you think being a politician requires certain skills, and that these skills are valuable and actually being paid for in status quo by companies?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, if you choose to be a politician, well, most people have a choice. They want to go either they earn some money or they go into politics. And many politicians could actually go into companies, but they choose to become a politician because they care about what they're doing. They care about serving the country and improving the status quo in the country. And that also goes for all kinds of other high-paid politicians. So the fact that you're just having a minimum wage now, at least matters not that much if you're thinking about the principles that are behind the decision to go into politics. And as we have also heard is that if you're somebody who cares about money, if you're somebody that cares about money, then you might as well go into the industry because we need people who care about the country in politics and not people who go into politics because of the money and aim to earn a lot of money in politics. And in any case, even if you're interested in having a career after, having a career after your political career and gain your old job, if you're into politics, you usually have a high influence. You have a high influence on the industry, you have a high influence on generally on a lot of people. So that is also capital that you gain out of being a politician. It's not only the direct money you get, it's also the connections you get, the influence you get from this job. And that is a payment in itself, if you could argue. Then on voting, so there's a point that we have a problem that people are not in touch with politics. That's a constructive part. And we think that if people see that politicians are paid the same wage as they are, they will be more in touch with politics because they know, okay, this guy, he doesn't lead a different life than I do. Maybe I should go to vote this time, and maybe I should really become more interested in politics because this is something really that concerns me. This is not just some kind of high stuff in the clouds that I don't know what's happening with. Some rich people making decisions for us. There's people who have the same life as we do, and we should vote for these people and we should get involved because these people are like us. And so you might increase political participation if you get people more into touch with politics by showing them that the political class is just there to serve the people, and they are the same as the people. Last point.
Yeah. Is it more or less like that the poor people run for office if the expected salary is high?
Well, poor people, as we've already heard, I mean, there's a couple of career choices you can make. If you go into politics, you usually run on principles, and a minimum wage can be an incentive to go into politics, yes, but that is good because it does encourage poor people to go into politics. Poor people, especially in countries with kind of elitism, would be happy if we have more participation by the lower classes in politics.
Sure.
So if you see that as an incentive, yeah, sure. Okay, so to wrap it up, we don't see how paying a minimum wage will pay bribery because bribery runs on different mechanisms. We see that paying politicians a minimum wage increases, gets people in touch with politics, that increases political participation. We don't see how it would kind of get people out of politics if they only have a minimum wage because the situation is the same in any kind, whether you have a high-paying job or a low-paying job. And we'll just those are the points I would like to make, and I thank you very much.
All right, thanks very much for that speech, and invite
So first of all, I'm going to go for a little bit of rebuttal about the government's idea about how corruption is always there, and about how their model would create more equality in the society. And then I'm going to go to my own points about the long-term decision making in the society. Second of all, political careers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about poor countries and effects in those countries. So first of all, it is very different, very weird idea that the government is representing here. That it's somehow contradictory that you either want money and you go pursuing a career in finance or whatever, or either you have dreams and you have some kind of ideas about the ideal society. They're not contradictory because normally if you want to have a certain kind of change in society, you're not usually happy about the status quo, and that especially is very important for the poorer people. And so the idea that the more high wages of politicians that incentivizes also the lower class of the society. So that creates social mobility that they have a reason to pursue these careers. So what we are saying in the opposition, that they have two ideas why they are pursuing these careers. They want to change the society, and also they want to have some kind of livelihood as well. And also, for example, okay, right, and then right, okay, so then I'm going to go to this to the idea about how do we do how the politics and decision making works. Normally, okay, in Western countries in Europe, political decisions and something changes take a lot of time, and the idea that you have really the only incentive that why are you in the why are you in the politics, that why have you been participating? It's like, okay, well, I have this one idea, but actually it doesn't really affect me personally. It creates the situation where it really doesn't, you have not that great incentives in doing these decisions that really really benefit you as well as a citizen. You first of all, you're a representative. You have a mandate to do decisions, but also you want to better your life as well, and the people around you. And so you want to do decisions that affect in the long term. But if you're not in that kind of state of mind, that you're free to go out, you're free to quit the political career at any time. So there's no incentive at that point. And also, if it's only for if this person who already has who already probably is a rich person, or who is not really that engaged, is more likely to do certain deals with some enterprises, some companies, and might be going to the little bit of a hasty side of the politics, and then I'm going to talk about these political atmosphere and political careers. And so this what the model of the government is creating is kind of a bias in the political atmosphere, because normally in the Western society we need to have as many we want to have this atmosphere that there's many different kinds of views, and in that setting we can have a nice coalition of different ideas. So this their model is making the situation that mostly they're going to do more probably right-wing the decisions because they're probably more more people in that social class, and also this leads to those impacts that I have already said. But why do we think that there's a different reason of a certain responsibility of a politician? Is that that the politician has a very different work schedule than normal people, like normal professions. For example, they have quite a bit of responsibility, and their mandate. Why are they there? Is that they're making some kind of difference in the society, and if they have like a minimum, like a median wage, it affects to their motivation and in doing these their decisions, and they feel like we're not reimbursed enough to do those decisions, and at the same time, if for example in Estonia and Lithuania, the median wage is about 600 euros per month. So if in this kind of setting, somebody argues that they will not be affected, that their work as a politician will not be affected by for example, like agreeing to some bribery or corruption, is very weird, because they cannot really take advantage of their mandate as a politician in doing the right decisions that they have been chosen. Like why are they there in the first place? So for these reasons, we beg you to oppose.
I thank the previous speaker very much for that speech, and would like to invite the Member of Government to open the case for the Croatian Government.
So we have 3 points that we would like to debate. First is empathy, second economy, and third leadership. So first, to answer to the points of the opposition. So you have claimed that being a politician is not a safe path. So maybe the time when you are in election as a politician is more emotional, and you have fear that you will not get your seat. But after that, when you are in the parliament, we see it as a safe place to be and not very risky, so you can predict what you will be doing in the next few years. It's clear. So the next, corruption. It exists already, and it's not about how much money you make with your job, but it's more about your values and tendencies. So maybe even in poor countries you have people that are a great politician and do not make salaries, but it's hard to bribe them because they have beliefs. Let's look at Nelson Mandela, or let's look at other politicians and activists in society things. So then, why do we need politicians? So they serve the society, and here we talk about empathy, and they have a term of 4 years to make a change, to be a change maker. So we want the best candidate. We don't want to have politician incentives by the salaries, that they will see it as an opportunity to make personal profits. But we want to know that politicians that we will have in our government, they are the change makers. They want to do more. They look beyond, and they understand the problems of the society, because receiving a medium wage will make them look through the lenses of people living at the standards.
Yeah, we absolutely agree with all of this. What we are saying in opposition is that it's much more likely that with your plan, that people who are actually already rich and who are biased, they will get to the parliament, because poor people can't get there, which means that the state is not represented in the parliament.
Yes. This is why what we mean with the median wage is about limiting the increase of the wages for politicians, so that they will know what's the upper limit, and if you are as rich as let's say Bill Gates, maybe you will not be willing to get a job that is lower, below the wages, the money you've been doing before. So your incentive will not be making the money, more money than you had before, but it will be to make a change in the world, in your society. And you will be able to understand the living standards of your people, of people from your country, because you will be at least earning that. And of course you will still have great possibilities, because if you are going to have trips to international conferences or meetings with other politicians, that's everything bonus, so they get it reimbursed. And this will, the final effect that the efficiency of the work and reform imposed will increase for the society. Right. And when we talk about economy, wait a second. So we talk about, let's look from the cost-cutting perspective. If we have the median wage, of course we will think about what's the best wage that we can have for all politicians, so that it will be homogeneous. But if we have this, in general terms, we will cut the costs, and we will save money for the budget, for reforms, for programs for the society, for children, and so on. And we have to highlight that if you are a politician, you are not in business. So these are two different points. You are not here to make money, and we don't want to have increasing spendings on security service. What you said before, that a politician only think about money, because the thing that they should think of all the time and constantly is how to improve the life of society, how to serve better. That's it.
I'd love to have 300 Nelson Mandelas or Mother Teresas in Parliament. However, real politicians now in your world have to make a choice to send their children to a good university or to be a politician. So we'll get worse politicians, or politicians that don't have a family, so these people won't be represented. How is that any better?
Yes. That is a good point, but let's look at this from the side. If we have politicians with the average wage, right, we will be able to supplement, to give money to the universities, to create free and open universities that they will not have to pay it from their own. So that will be more open to poor people as well, to get education. And they will be able to apply for a job at the parliament and to represent the voices of people that are not coming from rich families. That's the point. And let's talk about leadership, and that's the last point we want to say. The quality of leadership finally will increase, because people coming to the parliament will not be managers, will not be business people wanting to make more and more money, to have personal profits. They will be leaders there, because they will have this idea. They will want to make a change. And they will not only look at the four-year terms and short-term strategies and reforms and laws, but they will have a social trust with the communities that they will represent, and that will guarantee them that they will come back to the parliament next 4 years later.
So even if your whole economic plan works and we save some money on the politicians, if you save 1 million, you can give every university student a free cup of coffee. How is this a feasible plan?
Well, we don't know the numbers right now, and we will have a closer look at this in the future to ensure that the policy that we are proposing today will be efficient. Okay? But we believe that this world needs a change, and we cannot leave it as it is today. And more, we believe that we can ensure that future generation will live in better and fair world, and politicians will be more, will live in a world of justice, and politicians will have the goal to improve the life of the societies, of the people, and will serve and not make own personal benefits. Thank you.
I thank the speaker very much for that speech, and invite the member of opposition to open the case for closing opposition.
for the proposition side, who fills a seat matters to us. And who that person is matters to us, and what he does in everyday life, what decisions he makes matters to us. Why? Because we don't think that if you are a politician, that if you're sitting in a seat, that your personal life and your personal finances have a division. We think these two things are taken into account also when you're sitting there in that room, working your ass off and not getting a lot of money for all the efforts you take. We say what matters for politicians indeed is what they say: you should follow your constituency as good as possible. The group of people who elected you, you take decisions for them. But if you have no money, the lack of money is opted into that calculus. We think that's bad. All right, I have 2 points to bring to you. First point is less well skilled will go there, and I will add to the analysis. Secondly, I will talk about how less well the representation occurs and how less the democracy happens, which we don't like. And thirdly, I'll tell a lot about this human factor that I already took, what I just mentioned. All right, firstly, skills. 2 points on this. Why won't people with skills don't do it? Huh? Why won't they just go into a political job? We heard firstly people with skills with money will go in there, which is the wrong ones. We say a lot of people who do not have the skills who go and get in there, and the people we want to get in there, there are less of, right? Because if you have lots of people wanting to be a politician because there is a rather good pay and there is also the side of, well, be able to contribute, we think this is a competition for these seats, and automatically you get a lot more people who want to, a lot more skilled people who want to get there, right? Okay. So why do we want people who also can do a job at Shell work there, right? A lot of reasons. First of all, you have to understand completely difficult tax records. You have to understand how incredibly difficult laws work and what happens. You are a member of parliament, right? And a member of parliament is that you get in check all these technocratic ministries, right? Who get you with reports, all kinds of technical things, right? Which are really, really bad to understand. What we are saying is we need also people who are very technocratic and not only idealistic into parliament, right? We not need to only the Mandelas, we also need these corporate executives or who would have worked as corporate executives or who are top of the bill in that regard, right? And if they hear they only get a meager wage, and well, a lot of people who get from university, of course they are idealistic and they do get there, but they also of course have into their calculus that they want to take care of their family, right? That they don't want to, that they won't want to walk around in scroungy suits. All these kind of things. These are things that people simply take into account, and well, this brain drain will occur, right? We think this is very, very bad because eventually they will take the wrong decisions and we are being misgoverned, which can lead to many damages in any way possible. Bad decision making, which costs a lot of money, which is bad for the taxpayers. Okay, then less well representation, less democracy. Why is this bad? Well, everyone should be represented because we oppose duties on people and we think you should have the sameness. But how this is worked, right? We think the background matters, of course, but we think the background matters as well if you sit there in your parliament and you vote for a certain law, right? If it's true that indeed there is a lot of Donald Trumps getting in there, or indeed if there is a lot of people from different backgrounds than usually, less skilled ones, less people who are families because they have to have money for families. If that is true, you will have a different group of people sitting in that parliament than are actually the people who are living in that country, right? So they're gonna vote differently. Either whether they are backed by a certain constituency or not, if it's liberal or social, they also take into account how they judge the world. And when they see a law pass by, they will say, well, this law should be different, right? So what we think will happen is that less laws, for instance, for university students will be passed by because, well, they're not known how the skilled, they're not acquainted to that much skills. We also think that, for instance, it will mean that there will be a lot more worker laws passed by, which hurts the other groups, right? We think there is a disconnect, which also makes that their argument is flawed about well, that money just votes are attracted, because a lot of people don't feel attracted by a group of people sitting there who are not actually representing them, right? It's only a certain group with certain skills. And secondly, that argument that they gave was also flawed, simply because there's a lot of different reasons why people don't want to feel attracted to vote, right? So we think that, and that's a disconnect. Also, we think it's accountability, simply because if you feel represented, as a rich person, for instance, who pays a lot of tax, right, and you know that there are skilled people in there, you are much more likely to think, oh, this is a good law, because there are people in there saying good things. But now it's like, well, yeah, there are guys that get a lot of money, and well, they're not that skilled, and etc. So they don't feel that keen to actually go with that law. They probably feel a lot of ways to tax dodge or whatever. So what we think representation matters for that as well. Last point, human factor. We think it's time for a POI, right? Anyone? Yes.
As the opposition, I believe that having more corporates and business parliament, men in parliament will
I do believe that one, because you have more money and you get there easier, and you will take that job for himself for 100,000 euros otherwise. All right. Second, then of course, human realities. You have lobby groups, for instance. How does this work? Lobby groups that go and talk to you, they have a bunch of talk, and they come in, and you come there having to go to traffic because you don't have a car, go with your Scrounzy Stoet, and then they gave for you all kinds of nice things, right? They talk about corruption in a hard way, but you also look at corruption in the soft sense, right? Having a nice dinner, having a nice debt, and you are much more open, much more appealing to this than that you will take a decision, for instance, to opt for such a lobby group in the parliament later on. We think also the human factor that should be taken into account lastly is that it's fair. It's simply fair. Because if you work your ass off and all day and night, you need to get a bit more money. And also, if you don't get that money, you will feel disappreciated. Because the money you get as a parliamentarian is also our appreciation for the hard work that they do. And he can say at a certain point, well, screw this, I'm working my ass off and I only get few pay. And people already say every day that they don't like what I do, right? So they lean around or they don't care anymore, right? We think people, for these reasons, we think the vote in line with their constituencies. This is what matters. And if you don't give them enough money, it's much more likely that they won't.
Speaker very much for the speech, and now I invite Governor Webb to close the case to the last government today.
Well, thank you very much. The opening government, well, to summarize the debate, the opening government insisted on 3 points: equality, corruption, well, it's 2 points, equality and corruption, basically. Equality, it has to do, people's representatives must be in the people's stands. And, well, that's one important point for us as well. We will expand on that later. And about corruption, too high salaries are an incentive for sheer money makers to become politicians. And then on the other way around, not so high salaries are an incentive for people who are not just there in order to make money, who are not mainly intending to make money to go to represent people. Of course, well, I understand, well, we saw here the objections that politicians would be harder, well, politicians...
On this point.
No, wait. Politicians would be... Well, low salaries, well, a policy of low salaries will be unapplied on poor countries, they said, and low-paid people are easier to bribe. Well, later on, it was insisted that, first of all, the median citizen does not have to worry about money every day, well, especially in developed countries. So the average worker does not have to worry about putting food on their plate every day. They have that relatively covered. So we are not talking about here low salaries. One important point is that the average salary is not a low salary, by definition, by the way.
On this point?
Yes.
I'm still kind of puzzled. Could you please explain the mechanism why the idealistic people under current model do not go to politics, and under your model they start to appear to go there because they earn less money?
I don't understand the point.
Just continue.
Okay. Well, the thing is, there was an insistence also on the point that, well, corruption happens whenever politicians have a high pay or not so high pay. Because in the long run, what is an incentive for corruption is power. It is not, well, power in order to make, getting power in order to make money. What we believe is that in case someone has an average salary, well, at least the incentive would not be as high. And, well, the opposition insisted that, yes, of course, wanting money and wanting a better society are not contradictory. And, sure, but the point is that one thing is wanting money, wanting enough money to live. Another thing is wanting as much money as you can get, unlimited, in an unlimited way. What we insisted was mainly that an average salary, at least, would increase the probability that politicians enter into parliament or enter into office because they really want to make a change. I mean, they want to be change makers and not merely increase their wealth in an unlimited way. Of course, I understand the objection that this would, well, some people might think, but what if some politicians then would feel that their skills are not well paid? They are not recognized via payment. But I would like to insist that an average payment is not a low payment. Average payment means that they are in a position, they are not so high paid that they don't understand the needs of the average person in society, and they are not as lowly paid as not to be recognized for their skills. Yes?
Okay. If I work 60 hours a day, my ass off, to work at extra tax level in every way I can get the right done for the people, and I only get a merely 1,600 euros, and I also have to pay the tax and everything else, do you think that is fair?
I wonder, I really think that the average salary in a developed country is much higher than that. Second, a politician gets more incentives, apart from which we raise the point that they get the things they have to spend on, because they have to travel, they need, for example, assistance in order to do their work better. A parliamentary, for example, doesn't work alone. They have their own councillors, they have assistants, they need to travel. That is covered by the government. They don't have to pay that from their wage. That's also an incentive. Secondly, what an average person really wants in terms of payment, it's yes, of course, he wants their skills to be appreciated, but appreciation of skills is not only via payment. I think the point is that, again, a good salary plus the incentives they have in terms of being their needs being covered without them having to cover them from their own wage, their extra needs as a parliamentary. That's one point, and the other point is that the average salary, again, increases the probability that people really want to make a change, enter into the arena, and that's part of what makes an incentive for a politician that really wants to make a change. The opportunities for making that also pays off. It's not only money what they want. No, thank you. I think I'll close that. Thank you very much for your
I thank the previous speaker very much for that speech and invite the opposition to close the entire debate.
Ja, gewoon met die mensen die een change willen maken. Welke was het? Die sowieso wel komen.
In closing opposition, we have given you the human political reality and shown you we get worse politicians under the model of the government that will represent the people that have voted for them worse. I will present you two clashes in my summary. Firstly, what do we want in politics and how do we who do we want in politics, and how do we get these people in politics, and why won't we get them in the world of the government? Secondly, I'll be talking to you about how the political process look in practice, the human factor, and how does this represent the people in the best way. So firstly, who do we want in politics? In politics, we want people with certain skills. So I already PO'd OG about this. My partner also talked extensively about this in his extension. We want these people to represent the people that voted for them. And being a politician is hard, right? We've got this representative democracy because we can't all think about these difficult case files. They have to decide on things ranging from environmental decisions to tax laws to whether we want more or less immigrants into our country. These are very difficult cases, and they need to know a lot about it. In general, therefore, these are people with skills. They might be usually highly educated, and not necessarily, they can also be lower educated, but they certainly have skills that have value. I asked this to the OP government, and they agreed to this, right? So what do you then get the moment you have the choice for a career in politics or a career in a higher paid environment, where you get a lot of different things, right? Already talks about the low output you probably have because the chances, right, where you get a situation that you probably might not actually get in there. They say, well, people need to care for society. CG gives you the example of Mandela, and they say, yeah, well, Mandela was a very good guy, and so there are a lot of people, but not all politicians can be leaders. Why not? Because, as we explained to CEO, they have children. You know, they also might want to send their children to good schools. They want to have a nice house. These are all things they want, and they say, no, we don't want these people. Well, the thing is, then you will get either of two different groups, right? You'll get either, as we've explained to you, the people that are lower skilled, right? Because they, still have an incentive to actually go into this process. They think, well, I'm actually below medium or at medium right about now. I can actually go for this and get all the benefits of power. People, 50% above this, above the expected median, will actually not go into politics because they feel, well, actually take my chances. What does this mean? This means they probably get influenced by lobbyists more. They probably get influenced by employee organizations more. We say this is very bad for representation, which I will get to in my second part. Well, then they say, well, it's uncertain anyway, right? It's uncertain when you go into the process of politics anyway. Well, we say, well, the thing is, when you pay more, you kind of, say, you give them a bigger carrot on the stick to get in there. But also, the reason why we pay people if they get a term and then don't get a second term, we give them money in most Western liberal democracies they want to talk about, because we feel that otherwise we wouldn't get all these people. We already have this mechanism. So we probably get lower skilled people, or, as OO talked to you about, get only the rich people, right? Get the Donald Trumps of these people, right? So what we've shown you then, throughout our bench, OO showed you, we get Donald Trump, Berlusconi, who are power hungry, who have the money anyway, who don't need it, who wouldn't care if they get $1 million or €1. Or, as we've explained to you in the second opposition, we get second-grade politicians who are very likely to be influenced by the people, by different groups, and not represent their constituency in the best way, as OG met in themselves. No, thank you very much. So then on to the idea, how will the political process look in practice, and how this will represent people in the best way. As I've painted you, as my partner's painted you, the political process is a difficult situation. Alright, so rich people will probably, look out for their own interests of their group. They're not that interesting when they get in. We want to talk about, the people who are less rich who will be influenced. I'll talk to you about bribery, right? And they said, well, it's likely. And then all we get, so that clash is already sort of won by I'll show you why we print a more realistic mechanism even, but they already win it because all we heard from the government bench is, well, it happens anyway. So what does OO listen? They say, well, it's more likely. What do we then add to this clash specifically? We said, well, firstly, if you're in the top 10%, you have less reason, less envy to go get this money. Whereas if you're in the, in the 50%, on the medium, in the middle, there are a lot of incentives. Chris talked about being valued, right? If a programmer is the same as a politician, if like the secretary, the office clerk that works for him makes the same amount of money, the politician will feel, well, the thing I do is actually not that important. People are incentivized in this way, not just because they get a bit of money, but also, as Chris explained to you, because they look at the comparative. What does this mean? If 50% of people have a nicer car, if 50% of people actually get send their children to better university, if 50% of people get to take their spouse out for dinner more often the time, this will disincentivize people to actually invest in their job or go into it in the first place. We say these are all very big harms we don't want in the world. Then let's look at the process in more depth. Chris also talked about it, right? You know, how does soft corruption work? So now we've talked about the hard corruption, bribery, giving money. You think, well, this might happen, but not in all cases. We do have some faith in politics. How does soft corruption work, right? This is the reality of political process I've been talking to you about. It means it's not just a sack of money, it's also the dinner, but also, you know, the schnabels. There's a lot of politicians that are already on committees of big companies. There's already politicians involved as advisors to big companies. This will become even more because these things pay. They'll have to get that money in other situations. They don't say they'll all do it. They say it's far more likely, therefore their interests will be far more intertwined, meaning they don't just represent their constituency, they also represent all these other things. I'll also explain to you, well, they're more influenced by lobbyists. First, APOR. I don't know, yeah?
Does the opposition believe that the model we propose of medium wage would be scalable to poor countries because it's a wealth-sharing model?
Okay, so nobody in Europe wants to talk about poor countries. I'd love to talk about poor countries. In poor countries, a few things would be the case. First of all, the politician would raise it immediately because usually, like happened in the Congo after the independence from Belgium, they actually became more independent. Moreover, we believe that in this situation, the thing I'm going to explain to you now is actually going to happen even more. Why? Also, we can talk about human reality. Namely, what happens? It's the social reality when you're sitting with a lobby group, like you talk to lobby groups. This is a good thing because they have interests. They're also called interest groups. You need to talk to them. But if you're sitting there and the lobby has an Armani suit, and you are having a second-grade car salesman suit, they seem more persuasive. How does it work? When I give a workshop in debating, I dress up nicer than the people I talk to because it gives me authority. We don't want our politicians to be influenced by these subconscious social ideas that are the human political reality. So we think that will probably work even in developing nations, but in general we think all this means is that the raw people will go into politics, people that do go into politics, and our poor will actually be more influenced by hard bribery and, more importantly, by soft bribery in different ways. Therefore, we beg you to oppose.